Gamers, welcome. Today, we are tackling thy beautiful and most exceptionally requested Elden Ring tier list. Now, we've beaten the game. We've done all of the cool things. Starting off, we are doing the Elden Ring locations. All right, I like vibes. I like atmosphere. I like cool stuff. Essentially, all of that is culminated into, I think, 6 or 7 major biomes and 3 to 4 kind of smaller ones. All with different aesthetics, different vibes, different music. Barely remember the music, but I do have some caveats on that, which I'll get into. And I have completed this game over the course of 2.5 months. We spent 126 hours beating absolutely everything. And when I mean absolutely everything, I mean absolutely everything. I mean nearly, I say nearly because someone can magically find one thing that I missed, but all of the bosses, all of the dungeons, all the enemies. I didn't get every item, I didn't get every drop, but I got as much as humanly possible. To begin, we are doing the locations. Now we will begin. So, Outer Gods, is it going to be that good? Okay, Round Table Hold. There's a lot on here. This is a little bit of an extended list that includes a lot of the smaller sections. I could just go left or right. I don't really want to... We'll just start with the way you naturally progress through the game. I'm going to give Limgrave, honestly, you open up, you walk out of those 2 doors, classic Zelda style. Limgrave gets an S. It's just true. It gets an S. It doesn't really do things wrong. People are going to say, oh, I like to skip it because everything's boring. But as a first playthrough, sitting in my room alone at 3 in the morning and just beating the absolute heck out of the zone and finding everything and like walking along the coastal cliff sides, like it was a great time. And then there's also a distinction. I don't know if we have Eastern Limgrave on here. I don't think so. It's the same area. And so being able to have like the foresty section, a really dense tree section that takes you into the underground, is really, really nice. So an important thing to know is that a really big distinction between all the From Software games is that there are traditional experiences, which are like Dark Souls 1 through 3 and Bloodborne, which are kind of linear and obviously not open world. So when you enter kind of brand name locations, these are the dungeons of the game. But Stormveil Castle, I think Stormveil Castle is great, and also Stormveil Castle holds probably some of my top 3 vistas, a section where just what you can see from left to right on your screen is absolute bliss. Stormveil Castle gets an S. It's the first traditional experience you encounter. It's very gold, it's very metallic-y, it's very, Renaissance, and just there's an outside, there's an inside, there's a cliffside, there's verticality, there's a secret underground that you get to go through and fight rats and your first demon tree worm or whatever the heck those are called. And the bosses are really fun. I really like it. Overall, it's super good. When you also get to backtrack through it in the way in which you couldn't previously access it was really, really cool. And walking into the first divine tower without even knowing that it's a divine tower, and that shot, I think here, let me find into the section. It's so beautiful. It's so sexy. Just a nice misty night, the perfect symmetry from left to right as you just walk up these staircases, even though the wolf that like guarded the section was like extremely scary to fight. But that shot is so nice. And like these long just pulling, and then you fight the golems that are sitting around that are just like, it was so nice. I liked it so much. And you finally like, the game feels like it opens up. It really just has like, yeah, exposure bias. It's the first one that you encounter, but exposure bias, it's the first one you encounter, and it's absolutely amazing. So I have no regrets with that. So that is going to go very easily and very simply S tier. Now, Caelid. So Caelid, you can do a handful of things. I think from a design standpoint, it's kind of rough because you're not exactly blocked off from going there even before Stormveil. So the leveling, a lot of the enemies are harder. There's lots of rod. It really sucks at sometimes. And the music and the vibes are just kind of, I don't know. It's Sometimes there's a lot of frustrations that you can walk into, making you have like a bad association with Caelid. But Radahn's fight definitely brings it up a notch. But I think the zone itself is just, it's not a problem. It's a feature to have these things. I just think that, but I'm giving Caelid a B. I think experiencing similarities of what was in Limgrave in Caelid wasn't as cool. And maybe you would say, well, if you experienced Caelid first, you would like it so much more. And I mean, you make a good point, but a lot of the things about Caelid were just kind of, a little, it was a little dead. The vibe, it wasn't my vibe. It wasn't what I was looking for. Let's see. Redmane Castle. Redmane Castle is good and bad at the same time. Entering it, it feels very dead. It's very empty. There's not much going on, and I don't really know if that was a feature or not, because when you go there initially for the festival, it's completely empty, and you just rock up, and then you do the thing. But also, after you do the thing and do the festival and do Radon, you can revisit it, and it's like a traditional castle. And the barricades are there, and now it's filled with enemies, and all the doors are blocked, and you have to go through, and like, I think it would have been cooler to fight through that space, because revisiting it with enemies actually in it felt kind of awkward. It felt like reversely correct. And it's really easy to miss Redmane because you can go there just for the festival and never know it's a real dungeon. And that, yeah, that really does happen. Now me, how extensively I played the game, I really revisit it. Now I say the bosses of Redmane. We're not getting into bosses. But, you know, if I say the enemies in this area suck and I don't like the area, you know, that also kind of affects, hey, these bosses in the area suck, so the area kind of sucked. You know, it's not completely informed, but it is a little bit true. The bosses Redmane Castle made it fun, but overall, I'm giving it a D. I think it sucked. I think entering it and the way you enter Stormvale is really, really cool. The way you enter Redmane, you like can't get in and you have to like walk around the back and there's like some bats like try to knock you off the edge and there's a ladder and all these like decrepit dudes are like really mad you're climbing the ladder and then you just go inside. Like it felt like I was breaking the game's rules just trying to play it correctly. So Redmane sucks. Lunaria of the Lakes. Okay, now let me make sure this isn't split between east, west, and center. It's not. So Lunaria of the Lakes kind of is a different experience depending on where you go and where you go. If I immediately, as a mage, was trying to find really cool magic, and I learned that, hey, the second you beat Stormvale, go to Carey Manor. So I just booked it straight up the left side, all the way to the west, and just ran up for 10 minutes. I skipped Weeping Peninsula. Wait, where's the Weeping Peninsula? Guys, I'm looking at it. Is it on here? It's not on here. I can't be this dumb, can I? It's south of Limgrave. It's not in this thing. All right, cool. This is Weeping Peninsula, everyone. We have Castle Morn. Yeah, okay. You guys made me think I was crazy. So we have Weeping Peninsula. This is Weeping Peninsula. For anyone, we had a brief technical difficulty interruption. Weeping Peninsula is really fun. I did Weeping Peninsula before Stormvale, so I was a little over-leveled, so to speak. But I thought it was really good. I thought it was just kind of like a further extension of Limgrave. The castle that you fight, you get your first legendary armament. That's really, really cool. You also experience golems potentially for the first time if you didn't explore outside of Stormvale that well. Because there's the Everjail that you fight with the Crucible Knight, and there's also the piece. The beaches of the Weeping Castle feel like Bloodborne DLC. Not familiar with Bloodborne, but you're probably right, just because of all those dudes that are just woken around. But there are some good memes in Weeping Peninsula. It's C? It's B or C for sure. I don't know. I was kind of talking badly about Caelid, so I gave it a B. But I was kind of just talking in reference to Limgrave. I'm gonna give it a B as well. It's okay. Oh no, it's worse. It's not as good as Caelid for sure. Caelid has cooler things in it. Weeping Peninsula does feel like a little extension. Now Castle Morn. Here we are. Castle Morn is cool. I think it's one of the weaker castles for sure. A lot of the enemies feel a little eh. You just fight demi-humans, like lore accurate, it's fine. But it's just kind of very gray, very eh. The secret backside is really, really cool. But there's not a lot of depth to this one. There's an outside, there's 3 ladders, and then you go backwards. So I'm actually going to give it, I'm giving Castle Morn an E, because Redmane Castle, there was way more exploration in Redmane Castle. There were like 5 different rooms and a bunch of secret areas. Castle Morn doesn't really feel like there's much to explore until you get to the second half where you jump off the edge, and even then it's only like 2 rooms, and the vibes are kind of eh. It's just demi-humans and like annoying, like it's okay. I don't think Castle Morn's that great. I also think the enemy is kind of whatever. There's random jellyfish. There's probably a reason for that. That's where I'm putting Castle Morn. Now, back to where we were. Get everyone up to speed. Lunaria of the Lakes. I like it, and I think it's wonderful, but it's split into 3 parts, distinct parts. You have the far left side. You have the far left, right, and center. And the swamp is really annoying. I think I definitely spent the least time in the swamp, just because it felt like I was aimlessly walking around. The lobsters with the bear at 50 cows were also out to get me, so I really just didn't have that much interest in trying to find things in the fog. You do fight a cool dragon. That's nice. You do get some free runes, like from the guys hanging off the little zeppelins or whatever they are. Lunaria is great. I also think that the visuals are exceptional. Okay, Lunaria. How am I supposed to say it? What do you mean I'm saying it wrong? It's Liurnia. Liurnia. I just want to say Lunaria. It's not Lunaria at all, but that sounds way cooler. So whatever, we're going with Lunaria. Lunaria. Mine's cooler, and English is hard. Don't get mad at me, all right? I did good in school, and here we are. I did good enough. I think it's okay. I think that a lot of the stuff that you encounter is really good. I hate the music, though. I think the music really bothers me. Liurnia. Not Lunaria. Liurnia. Oh, that sounds so awkward off the tongue. I'm gonna keep saying Lunaria. So Liurnia is nice. I think in the northeast section where there's lots of snipers, there's lots of bow characters, and there are both of the mausoleums. I think that section's a little odd next to the minor Erd tree because it's really, really hard to get to, and it feels like kind of off the beaten path. It feels more of like an Atlas region. But a lot of the caves here were really, really good. A lot of the sections were really, really good. I hate the ambient music. The ambient music sounds like, it just sounds awful. It just sounds like a screeching, like, it just sounds like a siren's going off, but like at half the volume, and it's not supposed to be a siren. It's like elevator music. It sounds terrible. Anytime I'm in there for more than 10 minutes, and I never knew it was that bad until I left and came back. So for the first couple hours, it was fine because I was looking at new vistas, but trying to min-max everything, I just didn't like it. But I think the zone is exceptional. In terms of a exploration zone, is it as good as Limgrave? I feel like it has higher highs than Limgrave, but it also has lower lows than Limgrave. I feel like some of the specific zones are cool, the specific instances, if you will, like some of the manors and things that you go to in some of the dungeons. But I also feel like there's way more of it that I dislike. So I'm gonna let it even out next to Limgrave, but a little bit worse. All right, the Academy of Rhea Lucaria. This is quite a controversial pick because you can overlevel yourself, but it's kind of the first time you really meet the contrasting playstyles. Rhea Lucaria. Lucaria. There's a lot of mages, and that can be really annoying for melee fighters, but it's got good vibes. It's got really good vibes. The way you get there is really cool. The music's really cool. It's actually quite short. I think that its most negative version, or its most negative quality, is where all the graces are placed. I think until you get like the final 3, it's really annoying, and you get the shortcut to go outside. I think that's really annoying. I think that the rooftop section is probably the worst. But overall, I think it's pretty good, but it's nowhere near as good as Stormveil. And I think the boss is okay. It's way shorter. I feel like it's a 2/3 of the size of Stormveil, and it's much more linear. There's not as many branching paths. And if they are, it's like a singular branching path, and that itself just becomes linear. I'm putting it at B. A lot of the secret rooms were really cool, and I think as a mage, exploring a mage section, like a secret Harry Potter castle, was fun, but I know it's not fun for everyone. And I know that going through an entire zone to only get mage things, and if you're not a mage person, and everyone's literally just like unrelenting swift glintstoning you, it's probably going to make you upset. So I'm just going to go stick that one at B. Now I want to backtrack a little bit through some of these. Chapel of Anticipation. So this is, for all of you guys, an area of the game that you open in. It's actually where you spawn and where you explore and fight your first set of mobs. Fight your first boss, and then are forced to die or are forced to jump off a cliff. There's not that much for you to do. There's not that much going on. It's kind of okay. You get to revisit it later on, which is amazing for perspective. Stormveil Castle also has a cliffside that opens up to this, and it's really, really cool. Without you even knowing what you're looking at, because it's hard to know. You don't know what an elephant is 2 feet in front of it, right? You got to pull back a little bit. But even when you see it pulled back from a cliffside, you didn't know that that's the place you spawned. So you don't really have like a reference visual. So for perspective, it's really cool. But as its own zone, it's going in the E tier. It's going in the E tier. It doesn't offer much. It's cool. You start the game there. There's one boss. If you kill it because you pick samurai and have 18 different weapons, that's awesome. And if you don't, you don't. You know what I mean? Now, we will go and hit the Round Table Hold. The Round Table Hold is your hub of the game. It's where you encounter most of your NPCs in passing and abroad. And it's where you have all of your stagnant NPCs for upgrades, you know, rewards, quest lines, and also your set of fingers to guide you, whether or not you choose to agree. Round Table Hold is fine. It's really hard to compare this because there's not another hub section in the game, and there's not enemies here, wink wink, except for that one time. So I don't really know. It's in a realm of its own, and so we can really just go off of vibes. Is it a cool hub? Think about hub worlds. Think about places you get to sit at. It's nice. It's not the coolest thing in the world. It's not the best thing in the world, but I don't really know what I wanted. It's kind of just average. It's kind of nice, like, you know. It's cool. It evolves throughout the game. It has some changes. It's dynamic enough where you can go through other doors. There's an enemy you can fight. It feels like it's living and breathing compared to some other areas. Depending on how far you've gotten through the game already. Okay, next. Ooh, where do we go next? Caria Manor. I don't want to do Atlas until I tackle everything beforehand, and as well as some of the underground sections, but we'll do that later. Caria Manor. Caria Manor is quite a bee, because there's lots of hands, and if you don't know, these hands are weak to fire. You kind of just have a grueling time getting up there. Caria Manor is very short, kind of similar to the way that, I mean, all of them are kind of short. It's similar to Castle Morn and Red. They're just manors and castles have that similar mid-size, where it's not as much as Stormvale or the Academy, but it's sizable. There's a really cool boss. There's also really cool magic. So if you're looking for that, it was one of my first stops in the game. And overall, it was good. It was good. It didn't blow me away. There's really cool verticality. This game really uses verticality a lot. Stormvale is king of that. I didn't really hate it other than the hands, and that's like literally the first 10 minutes. Everything else is fine. The boss is cool. You get a really cool magic. I'm just gonna give it a B. It doesn't strike me as anything insane, but it doesn't strike me as anything awful either. I'm gonna sneeze. Oh, I'm glad I got that out of my system. Okay, so Atlas Plateau. So the Atlas Plateau, really, I think this is the second moment in the game where you really feel like it breaks open. Like, the first time, or sorry, maybe the third. The first time, if you want to include it, is the opening in Limgrave. The second time, thank you, bless you, appreciate it. The second time is going to be when you hit that cliffside after Stormvale Castle. And then the third time is either whichever of the 3 or 4 ways you make it to Atlas Plateau. Whichever one you do, just the vista that it offers is absolutely exceptional. I mean, don't worry about where I place that. That's not what it is. Like, if we just do these vistas, like when you spawn up here, I mean, just the shot, it's exceptional. You're experiencing like a new golden hue. You're the closest to the Erd Tree than you ever have been. It's really exceptional. I think it's really fun. I also think you encounter probably your most set of unique mobs. Like, you haven't gotten to that point where a lot of people seem to complain that there's like reused assets all the time. Because, you know, from Limgrave to Caelid is different, and then Caelid to Lineria of the Lakes is also different, and then Atlas Plateau, it's also different, right? Each zone you kind of encounter a handful of different kind of enemies. It's fun, it's really wide open, it's really cool to explore. It's also awesome because at this point on the map, with the curvature, you were able to look backwards on everything you've encountered through like a lot of the mage towers, the left to right vistas, seeing like the beast clergyman like section all the way to the left, and then just being able to scan all the way across divine towers and everything. It's an absolute bliss. It's wonderful. I think, ooh, it's A or S. It's much better than Lineria of the Lakes, but I don't know if it's as good as Stormvale Castle. But they're different. I think I'm putting it in S tier. I think it's either S tier or it's the highest A tier option. I might make some rough changes at the end, but we'll go from there. Now we are going to do the Mount Gelmir. Where's it at? Mount Gelmir. So if you don't know, this is going to be kind of directly to your left when you enter the Atlas Plateau. And this is going to be the section that you take all the way up to Volcano Manor. Too much yellow. Volcano Manor, really cool section. Getting there is a little hard. You're kind of, don't worry about where I place it, but you kind of go and you can like left or right, and you're just like circling around a circle, doing kind of like a spiral until you hit the height to make it into the castle. I thought Mount Gilmere, the closer and closer you get to the end of the game, the more linear it gets, the more kind of cultivated and tunnely it gets. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but the funnel of exploration and branching paths, maybe not branching paths, open spaces, kind of tunneling. So you'll have like 5 places to go to. Everything gets more and more dungeon-like, more and more Stormvale Castle-like as you go. Mount Gilmere is kind of one of the final areas where it's really, really open, depending on how you want to include the plateau. I mean, sorry, not the plateau, the capital. I think it's fun. I don't think it's that special. I think it's kind of just, it's a means to an end. In isolation, it's not that good. I think I'm probably going to put it at the bottom of B. Actually, was there anything notable in Mount Gilmere? There's like a bear that jumps off the edge. That's funny. There's like some demi-humans. There's some knights. There's like a tower or two. Everything's really gray, and you're just basically just hopping to your next grace. That's like all your goal is. It's more of just like a spoon, not the meal, right? So I'm actually putting it at C. The Volcano Manor. Volcano Manor is the star beast at the top of Mount Gilmere is really cool. When you jump up that really on Torrent and you jump off that little wind tunnel and it drops you on top of him, literally at one of the highest points in the game at that moment, it is exceptionally cool. That is really the only exceptionally cool thing. Volcano Manor, I mean, you know it, I know it, everybody knows it. This place, it's a goat. It's a goat. It's exceptionally good. It's tight. It's dense. It feels like I'm playing, in its own isolation, it feels like I'm playing a completely different game. It's also your second hub location, actually, now that I think about it, compared to the Round Table Hold. If you choose to, you know, embark on that quest line, it has its own separate entire quest line. It's its own kind of faction, if you will, in the world. It's the first time you kind of meet a faction that feels large. Obviously there's factions with like the mages and things like that, but it feels like you're visiting it after the fact. Volcano Manor is like an active endeavor. People are actively going against the will, and it feels like a collective group of Tarnished that have agreed rather than just one character that pledges to mean it. It's a few rooms, doesn't even have a dungeon. Totally, yeah, very much. There's really nothing there, you know? Just, you know, there's more than what meets the eye. There's a lot of special quest lines that happen here. The boss is exceptional. I mean, it could go to Outer Gods. It could go there. I mean, but it's right there with Stormvale Castle. These two are exceptional spaces. The Royal Capital. The Royal Capital is a lot of fun. It is really dense. It is awesome. I thought it offered way more than I thought it was going to. There's a lot of fighting. It feels like Volcano Manor. It's Volcano Manor and Stormvale Castle, they're enclosed spaces, but you have some like room to shimmy around. The Royal Capital is an enclosed space, but it's also like an open region zone. Like it is very, very large. It's like the first enclosed area that kind of feels like a dungeon, and so there's way more going on. There's so much to explore. And there's also the sewers there. I don't think the sewers is on here, so I think we're kind of grouping that. Oh wait, no, there is the subterranean shining grounds. The sewers is there. Can't really talk about that separate section. But, I mean, the Royal Capital it's great. It's definitely not as good as Volcano Manor. It is really, really cool. Man. I think it goes in A. I think it's A. It's not striking me as heaven, but it definitely is so far above hell. And I think that's fair for it. Now let's see. The Shaded Castle. So the Shaded Castle is actually an outside section that's very easily missable, depending on if you look off cliffs enough, like I do. So it kind of strikes all the way in the north, as far as you can go, in between Volcano Manor and Atlas Plateau. It's kind of this like divot between the mountains. It's cool. It's surrounded by a poison circle that doesn't really affect you that much because you just get on Torrent and then you enter it. I think walking through the Shaded Castle kind of sucks. I've come to learn, now that I'm looking at this, I don't really enjoy the way castles are done. Sometimes they feel really dense and they're kind of and then other times they're really empty and there's like 8 enemies, but you're like going through the ruins of a castle and things are broken down. I think the boss of the Shaded Castle and like the final 2 rooms are really cool, but everything else, it if you guys know what I mean, but like on the map where like you fight like a fancy like ruins, and like you enter and there's like 8 enemies and you go up the stairs and there's 3 more, and then you open a chest and you're done, and you get like a handful of those, but they're named places, like Fort Height is some of them, I think. They're named places, but like they're very small. The Shaded Castle feels like the biggest version of those, and in that case, I think it kind of sucks. But however, the boss is extremely cool, but we're not rating it by that, so it's going right next to Red Mane Castle. It does have patches at some point in time, very special patches moment, but it didn't strike me as being that cool. So let's see. I don't want to do the. We can do the Ashen Capital. I think the Ashen Capital from a spectacle is exceptional. I think from seeing an impact of where the story is going is exceptional. I think seeing the world change and seeing your impact on it and seeing an evolution, I think it's one of the only spaces where you get to see an evolution of one space through multiple instances of time. It happens in the round table, but every place you enter kind of looks the same when you exit for the rest of the game. So going into the Ashen Capital, obviously the Royal Capital, is really, really cool, but obviously like 90% of the content is cut. It's kind of meant to just be a spectacle and a visual, not really a combat zone. It's kind of just like an endgame lore check. But comparing it, be like, oh, what are the bosses? What are the enemies? It's not like that, but what it does do in its own little bubble, I think it's way more comparable to the round table. Not that it's a hub, but in what you're doing there and the fact that there aren't enemies is really interesting. But I'm going to put it at the bottom of the bottom of A, because I think that it should be in its own list, but it's like one of the only places in the game that operates like this. And it's still really, really cool what does happen, even though it's kind of like a short-lived, like 30-minute segment, which there are enemies there and there are little secrets, but it's like 2/10 or like, I don't know, 1 to 2/10 of how much is actually in the capital. But obviously the capital's in ruins now, so it's different. The mountaintops of the giants. Okay, the mountaintops of the giants. This is where I think through streaming the game and playing the game and talking with everyone, this is where you really feel kind of the open world aspect die down. This is really where you feel that there aren't branching paths. You really see, like, you kind of get up there, you get to the top of it, and then you just go. And there's not really a lot of fingers spreading out. It's not like, oh, where do I go? What can I do? It's we're going, like, we're locked in. Because at this point in the game, you know, a lot of the lore, a lot of characters, there's a lot of motivations, there's a lot of goals and what's going on. There's not that there isn't room to, like, explore a ruin, but that's way more on kind of the back burner. That's not a bad thing. It's perfectly fine to funnel in. Even if you look at the way the map works, I mean, so like when you look at this, even though it's really wide, like these spaces are way denser than some of these opening sections are. I know there's like the 2 halves, and I feel differently about these 2 halves, because like the fog in this one, it's very different. But even for this section being so big, it kind of narrows you down, even though you think that it's a strength. Going from open to linear really encompasses the importance of what you're doing. I agree with you. I don't think it's a con. I just think that when you look at this map, and in my head it's like, oh my god, bro, when we get to the, like, because if you look at just like the sheer volume on the map, it's really only the purest white points that are explorable. So this makes this the exact same size as Atlas Plateau, nearly the exact same size as Limgrave. However, it actually feels smaller than that, because you're kind of directed way more. And that's not a bad thing at all. It's just, like I said, it's that funneling of content throughout. I just got here, I just opened the first Zelda gates, what am I doing? I'm a tarnished, I have no maidens, 18 dungeons later and 15 bosses, versus like, this is our goal and we're going forward with it. I think it's really fun. I also have an absolute bias towards snow regions. I think they're wonderful. I think they're so cool. They're very cozy, they're very nice, and I'm also going to give this an S. It's done really well. The vistas are done extremely well. The shots are awesome. It's everything that I said about Atlas Plateau, outside of the open world regions, but just the vistas and seeing where you've come as it circles around. Mountaintops is all of that and more, because you're like at your final goal. There was a moment in stream where everyone had me go buy the telescope. You guys told me to go get the telescope, and from literally Santa, the initial merchant, and you can zoom in from that merchant, from that area where you first meet Ronnie, and from the what is it, the first steps, and you can zoom in all the way to the cauldron, and then actually standing on the cauldron and looking all the way down on the world that you've gone through, there's seeing things and being able to go to those things. It's extremely validating. It's extremely fun, feeling like everything's in reach. Being isolated by surrounded by ghost animals and trees, it is isolating. It doesn't feel lived in. It feels kind of abandoned. I mean, you can see the detriments of the war. You can literally see on the map the corpses of giants and skulls drawn in on the map where they actually are. All of these little nuggets, you can't tell, but go look in your map. All of these nuggets are actually just broken over dead bodies of giants and trolls and things of that nature. And it's absolutely insane. Water break. And so because of that, it's definitely going, I don't know, it's neck and neck with Atlas Plateau. They are similar, but they offer different things, and I think it's perfectly okay that both of them are that goated. So we kind of have like our dungeon instances and our outer world instances, and I feel like those are pinnacle experiences. Also, the mountaintops of giants, one more thing, is that it's kind of broken up into two parts, and I think the eastern and the western halves are actually very different. In terms of like being guided and funneled down to like a really, really open region. I feel like literally the left and right halves are complete contrast, even though it's the same zone. Also important disclaimer. So Mikula's Halig Tree. This section was okay. It wasn't that big. This is where you spawn in on the branches and you have to walk down and you go through like the white marble areas, and then eventually you fight the horseback boss that wraps around the tree. It's okay. It's not exceptional. There are some cool moments for it being late game. But I think it's just okay. I think it's probably I could say bottom of S. I don't know, like the spectacle, there's only like one boss. It's like a 2-hour thing, if that. If you die a lot, which I did, to be honest. The branch area is the Kaled of the late game. Yeah, it feels like that. So, I don't know, bottom of B, I don't think it's that great. I think once you get to this point in the game, I think after you make it to like areas of the capital, it's not very likely that anything you're finding or anything you're doing is dramatically checking your playthrough. The F-Field Brace of the Halig Tree, this is an outer wrap. I had a lot of issues with this section. I think it is really cool, but I think the late game spike, my patience was wearing thin. The enemies that you fight, I don't know what they are, but like the 8-arm ones that teleport and then come out of like the golden black hole out of the ground on the bottom, those enemies are awful. You fight some hard enemies. The paths on this one are pretty difficult. As I was playing it, it was probably one of my least favorite sections to play. It does have really cool verticality, but I don't think the verticality was fun. It was kind of inorganic sometimes. You kind of were breaking the system, and what I mean by that is like, you weren't like going up ladders all the time or certain sections. You were kind of jumping on like edges and pieces and doing it in a way where like the developer didn't intend it, but that's actually the way they intended you to get around. You can even see in the picture those like little slanted pieces that hold the towers together. You're like jumping across those, and it's okay. It's a very small section, but I didn't really like it. It is hard. Maybe that's why I didn't like it. Maybe I sucked at the game. It was difficult. But I'm putting it at C. I didn't like it that much, and that's just what it's gonna be. So the Runestream Precipice, this is one of I think it's the most correct way. The Runestream Precipice is the way you climb up to, that the game organically tells you to go through to make it to Atlas Plateau. You can go through the lift of a roll or something like that, and that lift is what takes you there, but there's catapults blocking you off, so you end up searching through areas of Lunaria to get there. I thought this section was fun. I thought it was fine. I think it was really cool kind of scaling the side of a mountain. The magma worm bosses, whatever. Killing the bats was cool. There was a lot of good loot. It kind of felt like you were breaking off the chains and you were really getting into the game. Like you were really getting in there. Because like Lunaria and Limgrave just kind of felt like 4 fun zones for you to learn around. And then like Atlas was like, oh, I'm doing things now. Like this is my goal to make it to the Erd Tree. Like a lot of the characters tell you to go there. A lot of them are like, oh, you're collecting pieces for the lift. And everything else is like so much of the other stuff is just skippable. And you can skip this section too, but this is on the path of like the game's intended location. I thought it was really fun. I thought it was really cool to go through. I'm gonna give it a mid B. I thought it was nice. I'd fun with it. It wasn't the greatest ever, but I have perfectly okay opinions of it. Probably an A for you, honestly. I don't completely disagree, but I don't think it did enough special. I just think it is like, it was designed as a B location. Now we're going to the subterranean shutting grounds. For those that aren't familiar, this is the sewers of the capital. This is where you do majority of the dung quest line. This is where you find a lot of rats, a lot of demi-humans, a lot of big omened horned creatures, and it's overall a really grim and crappy time. However, this is one of the moments in the game where it is an extreme labyrinth. It is genuinely, I got lost probably 6 times, and I felt like my sense of direction on where I was going, what I was doing was great. There's like 4 different rooms, but you won't even know how they connect, where they connect, or what's going on. The verticality is insane. You're like a Mario jumping through 18 different pipes, through 18 different turns. This has some of the most easily missed stuff because it's so hard to get there. There's a lot of secrets here, and it's really, really fun. It's really fun to go in there and kind of get lost until you're looking, at least most players won't do this, but I was looking for like the final 10% of things, like the final set of things, and just got lost. And like couldn't find my way there. And that was frustrating, but it was also really cool because you kept seeing things and you're like, oh crap, I thought I explored everything, but I gotta go back. And then you go even further and it's like, oh my god, how the heck am I gonna go there? I can't find it. And it's like, then you learn about like the omen stuff and the horn care, and there's just so much that happens playing through and like asking you guys like, oh my god, have I done it yet? Is this everything? I don't know where to go next. That happened like 4 times, and that happens like nowhere, nearly not at all. Sometimes we'll be like, oh hey, you missed this one thing, but like this area I was genuinely getting lost in, and I kind of want to put it at S. Now that I think about it, it's top, not S, it's top of A. I think it does its section really well. I think it's really fun to get lost in, and it's really cool because it kind of gets scary. Like it genuinely gets a little spooky. I mean, I'm a loser. I hate horror games, but it got a little spooky. So I'll put it bottom of S, but it's in the sorry, bottom of A, but it's in the A+. Okay, friends. Castle Soul. Castle Soul is the castle section. Wow, I guess every region has its own castle, huh? It is the castle of the mountaintops. I think this section is probably one of the best castles. It has probably the most well spread out areas of enemies. It has a really difficult boss. I believe it's Commander Niall. It's a good section. It's fun. There's enough secrets without it being like a labyrinth, but it's not completely closed off where there's nothing to do. Kirito is also in here. Kirito carries it. There's good enough secrets, and there's also a painting in here. It feels probably like the densest castle. Obviously, we're not including Stormvale, but it is the densest castle, and I think I'm putting Castle Soul in the A tier. I think it's really good. I think it would be, you think it should be B because the area looks big. Not good items, but the boss is fun, but annoying on late game plus. Yeah, I guess I am completely pulling back on any boss specific things or maybe stuff about new game plus. Because I know that sometimes, when the numbers get too big and there's not enough, the scale breaks, it can be a little difficult. But I think Castle Soul is the best of all of the medium-sized castles without a doubt. Without a shadow of a doubt. Okay, let's do the underground section. All right. So we're going to do Sophia River. So this is, I think, the first one you encounter. This is the first one you encounter, and also it is the lowest level section, technically. Because above this are like the cities and all that. I thought this section was absolutely exceptional. You get here by the lift in Limgrave, and you go down, and it's super fun to be there. You have to light up, like the little puzzle of it is really fun. There's hidden sections, but you kind of have to light all the torches up, and it forces you to explore the area in a very organic way. They're not hard to find. They're just kind of like littered around, like someone sprinkled breadcrumbs. The boss isn't amazing, but the spectacle, and it's really good because when you open it and you see the underground section, it's really, really cool because it lets you see the other part of underground sections. So it's like, oh man, I'm down here. Oh, there's more to being down here than just where I am. And it opens up, it's like, oh, there's an entire place above me. And I think all of that and the design of it, I think this is most definitely, I kind of almost want to put it in S. But I think it's definitely going in A. I love it. It's so good. It's so good. So Nestella Eternal City, this is what feels like the smaller of the two Eternal Cities, but I just think the underground sections of this game are done so well. I think they're so fun to go through. I think they're really, really nice. They're smaller, but they are like the perfect bite size. Like, you know, when you eat a meal and you're like, you can be full, but you can be like enough for dessert, over full, or like that perfect, like you stop and you're like, this is great. That's exactly what these are. I think I would have always enjoyed more, but I think what it offered perfectly in a very bite-sized piece. And I feel like, I feel like it's going to go on the mid or bottom of A. I just think it's really, really good. And then to follow that, Nokron the Eternal City. So Nokron the Eternal City is where the meteor crater happens and you go through. And this one feels like larger of the two. And it feels really, really fun to do and really, really good. So good to go through. You also have like another torch segment. It kind of repeats in a way, but I liked what I did the first time. So I also liked doing it the second time. The boss at the end was cool. The sections were cool. Being really, really high. The verticality and seeing spaces below you, seeing this free river below you was super cool. I think it's better than Nokstella, and so I'm going to put it mid-tier of A. So we have Sophia River, top of A, mid-A, and then bottom of A for that one. Okay, we're nearing the end. The Ainsel River is essentially, oh man, this is where a lot of the waterways are, and you can do things for Ronnie's questline here. You also fight Estelle, or you fight like an Estelle-like type mob. There's a lot of cool vibes. I don't think it's as good as the Eternal Cities, but it's not bad. It also leads you to the Lake of Rot. There's also a really cool Vistage where you can see the Lake of Rot but not go there until a little bit later, and by beating the other cities. And it's really, really cool, but it's kind of bite-sized. I think it's okay. It's not my favorite in the world, at least compared to the other ones, which all the underground sections have to be compared to each other. So I'm going to put it at mid-B. I think it's perfectly okay for what it offers, but it was kind of just like the same way that, Mount Gelmir is just kind of like the spoon and not the meal. It kind of just offers you to the next section. And I think there's a bunch of ants, right? There's ants in a handful of locations. But now we will go to the Deep Root Depths. The Deep Root Depths. Oh my gosh. It was exceptional. I think for how little I knew about this game, which I knew some things. I knew about Radon, I knew about like the memes, and I knew about a lot of small stuff when it came out, but I didn't really have context for any of them, and I also didn't really know... I didn't know like factually a lot of lore about the game, so I wasn't ever trying to piece things together. But the Deep Root Depths were right after you do a part of the Eternal City and you get in that coffin, and I was so afraid by doing anything in this game and ruining my playthrough, but I didn't want to look stuff up that much until I'd already completed a zone. This section, when I entered this and I finished it, it felt like I was the only person in the world that knew this section existed. I know that sounds really dumb because it's like, why would you think that? It's a single player game that's like unbelievably popular game of the year. But like from the screenshots and the memes and like the funny clips and like the commentary, I never saw a screenshot of this place. I never knew this place existed. And there was so much content in the game that like, I felt like I found this on accident. And when you see the largest and like most expansive underground section that obviously isn't connected to like the galaxy underground and whatnot, the space, it felt like my own little world. Like it literally felt like I carved off my own little piece of the pie and it was my section to explore. And that's how probably people feel about the entire game and many Dark Souls games. But this one in specifically was just awe-inspiring because I was like, oh my god, the size, what am I doing here? I'm underneath the tree. The roots are here. Why are there building size ants? Crucible knights are running around. Secret little bulb-eyed frogs that are trying to kill me. Like, and then, oh my gosh, the legendary dragon fight and the setup of Thea's questline. Like, this section was underground, but it was unlike no other section. It offered so much. It was so unique and it was so fun. And I think because of that, I'm putting it at the bottom of S. I think that the impact that it had on the world, I think in terms of the runes, I think that there's a dragon fight here. Dragon fights are always really, really fun and cool for me. It was just wild. Like, not even, this is probably where I feel like bias will come in. But like not even what the zone offered, but the way I got to experience it was so special and so like felt so uniquely personable that it just has to go at S. We are nearing the end. So we have Mogwin Palace. Mogwin Palace, oh, it was also exceptional. It was good. The theming was great. The blood setup was great. The fact that it was underground and Mogwin Palace was like your absolute underground end goal. And you had no idea how you were going to get there. It was literally just broken off on the completely separate path. You ended up seeing even more of it, I think, when there's like a special little warp tunnel, a little warp teleport you can get, where you teleport on top of some random thing and kill a Crucible Knight that's like literally just standing like in his own dimension. And you get to overlook everything as it slowly connects to Mogwin's Palace. I think this place, in the same way of Volcano Manor and Stormvale Castle, just the theme was nailed. The vibes were just nailed. I don't think the enemies were that great. I don't think that it was super fun to go through. It was pretty difficult to go through. It was an endgame zone. It had some annoying mobs. The birds were really annoying. And the boss fight wasn't that difficult, but that's not really what the boss fight felt cool. And the spectacle of it looked cool. And finally being there. I mean, if we look up, but like this shot, like, and you get to go up it and it's like open and like vulnerable and just the area that you just, it's the way it's presented to you is great. And like I said, it's bite size as well, but it's also kind of large. It's a pretty large inside section. It's difficult to get through. It's end gamey, but I think just from the contrasting reds and blues, it's wonderful. It's really fun. And let's see, I dropped it somewhere. I think I'm putting it. Ooh. I think I'm putting it. Yeah. I'll give it that. I'll give it mid A. I think it's mid A. I think it's great. I think it's a fine area to be in. It's super, super fun. And just, so the Monk Spear is perfect. You've been using it for your DLC character, and it's amazing. The White Mask quest is good. The 7 feet tall. There's a lot of blood. I think it's a difficult area, and I think if you were to experience this, like, and I'm always going to have a little bit of a bias on, like, extremely difficult areas where, like, you can't experience them that well, like Lake of Rot. I'm not a lover of those things, but I just understand. You know, I get it. Now we have, controversially, the Lake of Rot. This area is cool. It's very small. The way they utilize space is really weird because it's a massive, massive Lake of Rot, and then you just go into, like, a tiny little section. But it's also important for Ronnie's questline. I think it's one of the only reasons you would explore here. And I don't actually know how I feel about it, because also Ronnie's... We'll get there. Divine Towers. Okay, so this is going to go a handful of ways. Each Divine Tower is a little bit unique, but I wouldn't say it's its own zone. But they are named locations that are pretty renowned. And I think the Caelid... I think if you had Divine Towers, and then I think you had the Caelid Divine Tower... I think all Divine Towers go bottom of A. But then I think the Caelid Divine Tower, absolute S. And so if we're grouping all of them together, I think Divine Towers are just beautiful. I think they're amazing. I think they're super fun. I think the perspective it gives you on the game to grab the rune and complete the deed and know who it connects to and get a segment of lore and everyone, and like we don't even have the Mage Tower included here. So I'm counting that as a Divine Tower. I mean, even though it's kind of the entrance to the Divine Tower, I think the visual that you get when you enter these locations and what the game builds up in a way, all of these things for each zone, how it funnels into a Divine Tower is just exceptional. Sometimes there's no mobs at all. You just walk through and it's just the music and the bell hits and it's raining and it's gray and there's a golem that gets up and you just have to kill it. Like, there was not a Divine Tower, even with all of their unique intricacies, where there was no combat, where I got teleported to a complete black hole universe and fought an enemy, where I fought 3 golems, where we had to reverse the building upside down and go through it for the 3rd time and killed 18 different mages. It was always unique. It always felt like representative of the area that it was in, and I might put Divine Towers, they could be Outer God. But I'm putting it at the top of S. I think they're wonderful. I was so sad when I ran out of Divine Towers because I knew that I was like reaching the end of the game and I couldn't really be surprised by like they always felt like a wild card, like an X factor of the zone, and I just love them. I think they're amazing. Now we have Crumbling Farum Azula, which is the very, very end game location. And this section certainly isn't bad, but I feel like a lot of people complain of it because of the dragons and dragon combat they might not like. You fight beastmen. It wasn't particularly hard, but it was harder than at least 50% of the game, for sure. End game difficulty, even if you have high levels. But there were a lot of good secrets, and the same way that Stormveil had good secrets. I mean, just the willingness to hide the Plasudiacs, outer, the OG Ancient Elden Lord, a really, really cool boss. I mean, the spectacle was insane. The electric red lightning nuke, like, I felt so satisfying, so satisfied exploring this area because it was like checking off each box as you went. There were so many really, really fun sections. There were so many really, really cool, like, secrets that didn't take that long to find. It was like 4 branching paths, and 2 of them were really short. One was medium, and then one was the correct one. And it felt satisfying to go through, and just the feeling of the end of the game, the feeling of the unique enemies, and seeing kind of everything kind of funnel into a close. Like the really at the end of that funnel, just like I said, happened with the mountaintops. I think this area is exceptional. Man. Oh. Where is it at? It has secrets. It has bosses. It has character. It has lore. It has vibes. It has really, really good secrets. Ooh. Yeah. It's going at the top of S. It is wonderful. It's great. It's awesome. You know why it's good. I know why it's good. It's going. And then to end it off, baby, Lake of Rot. Dump her down right there. All right. Call it done. We did it. Oh, frenzied flame. Oh, frenzied flame. Oh, thy craziness. Oh, Miyazaki. Oh, thank you. Oh, so deeply. Obviously for the memes. Just kidding, idiots. Maybe just double kidding, idiots. It was great. So much of this game, so much fun. The zones were so fun. The exploration was so fun. FromSoft does it like no other. Yeah, there you go. Good memes, good fun, exceptional time, and the game's a treat. That's all you gotta know. That's all you gotta say, baby. Easy. Ba-ding!